We've all heard the same piece of advice from our parents, our bosses, and our banks. Renting is just throwing money away. You're paying someone else's mortgage. To be a real adult, you need to buy a house. Society treats homeownership as the ultimate signal of financial success, the literal foundation of the American dream. But what if that dream is actually a carefully designed psychological and financial trap? What if I told you that for most people, homeownership isn't an investment, it's a lifestyle tax? And more importantly, what if I told you that in today's economy, strategic renting is actually the secret weapon of the wealthy? Today, we are going to run the cold, hard math that the real estate industry doesn't want you to see. We're going to look at something called unrecoverable costs and show you how a 30-year mortgage might be the very thing standing between you and true financial freedom. To understand why the common wisdom is wrong, we need to look at two different lives, David and Alex. Both are 30 years old, both earn $100,000 a year, and both have saved up $100,000 in cash. David decides to follow the dream. He finds a $500,000 house in a nice neighborhood. He puts his entire $100,000 down as a 20% deposit and signs a 30-year mortgage at a 7% interest rate. His monthly payment for principal and interest is roughly $2,600. He's proud. He tells Alex, "I'm finally building equity. I'm not throwing money away like you are." Alex, on the other hand, decides to rent. He finds a modern apartment in the city for $2,200 a month. Everyone tells Alex he's being irresponsible, but Alex understands a concept that David ignores, the cost of capital. While David's $100,000 is now trapped in the walls of his house, Alex's $100,000 is still in his brokerage account, invested in a diversified index fund. Most people look at David's $2,600 mortgage and compare it to Alex's $2,200 rent and think David is winning because he owns his home. But David doesn't own his home, the bank does. And for the first 10 years of that mortgage, almost 80% of David's monthly payment is going directly to interest. That is money David will never see again. It is an unrecoverable cost, exactly like rent. But the interest is just the beginning. David also has to pay property taxes, which average about 1% of the home's value every year. That's another $5,000 a year, or $400 a month, gone forever. Then there's homeowner's insurance, another $200 a month. And then there is the silent killer, maintenance. A general rule of thumb is that a home costs 1% of its value per year to maintain. Some years it's a leaky faucet. Other years it's a $20,000 roof or a failed HVAC system. On average, David is spending another $400 a month just to keep the house from falling apart. When you add up David's interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, his unrecoverable costs are actually higher than Alex's rent. While Alex pays $2,200 and his expenses stop there, David is paying $2,600 for his mortgage, plus another $1,000 in hidden costs. David is actually throwing away more money every month than the renter he's looking down on. But the real damage isn't just the monthly cash flow, it's the opportunity cost. Remember David's $100,000 down payment? It is now dead money. It isn't earning interest, it's just sitting there, waiting for the housing market to go up. If the housing market grows at a historical average of 3 or 4%, David is barely keeping up with inflation after you subtract his costs. Meanwhile, Alex's $100,000 is compounding in the stock market at a historical average of 8 to 10%. Over 30 years, that difference is staggering. While David is worrying about his property taxes and his lawn, Alex's initial investment is doubling every 7 to 10 years without him lifting a finger. Then there's the anchor effect. Homeownership is a forced commitment to a single geographic location. If David gets a job offer in a different city that pays 50% more, he can't just leave. He has to deal with real estate agents, staging, repairs, and a 6% selling commission that could wipe out years of his equity. Alex, however, is mobile. He's liquid. He can pack his bags, move to where the opportunity is, and leverage his career growth because he isn't anchored to a pile of bricks. The wealthy understand that true wealth comes from liquidity and the ability to move capital to wherever it earns the highest return. They don't view their primary residence as an investment, they view it as an expense. They rent their time and their space so they can own assets that actually produce cash flow. They know that a house is a liability that masquerades as an asset. It takes money out of your pocket every single month, while a true asset puts money in. Am I saying you should never buy a house? No. There are psychological benefits to owning a home: stability, the ability to renovate, the feeling of belonging. But you must be honest about what it is. Buying a home is a luxury consumption choice, not a path to riches. If you buy a house because you love the kitchen, that's fine. But if you buy a house because you think it's the only way to build wealth, you have fallen into the trap. So before you sign that 30-year contract, run the numbers. Calculate your unrecoverable costs. Factor in the maintenance, the taxes, and the lost interest on your down payment. Compare that to the growth of a liquid portfolio. You might find that the person throwing away money on rent is actually the one quietly building a fortune, while the homeowner is just working to keep the lights on in a house they don't truly own. Stop following the narrative and start following the math, because the system is designed to keep you anchored, but true wealth is about being free.